Part 1: The Meeting of Two Fates. On the bustling streets of Los Angeles, where people from all over the world hurry about, John, a young American soldier recently returned from military deployment, was trying to readjust to civilian life. He often visited a small cafe near the university, seeking moments of peace amid the lively city. Mai, a Vietnamese girl with sorrowful eyes that shone with resilience, was pursuing her dream of a better life in America. She came from a small village in Vietnam, carrying a heart full of hope but also bearing pains that she could never forget. Mai was the sole survivor of her family after a massacre during the Vietnam War. She came to America to escape her past and to search for a brighter future. Yet terrifying memories of her family, the devastated village, and the mournful cries continued to haunt her every night. They met for the first time at that small cafe, where Mai worked part-time after school. It was a sunny afternoon, with soft light streaming through the glass windows, illuminating John's golden hair as he sat quietly reading. Emily, Mai's classmate who introduced John to Mai, unknowingly connected two fates that seemed to have nothing in common. Cheerfully, Emily called Mai over and introduced them. "John, this is Mai, my classmate. Mai, this is John, my friend from high school. He just got back from the military." John smiled warmly, extending his hand to Mai. She hesitated for a moment before taking his strong but gentle hand. As their hands touched, Mai felt a light jolt, making her heart race. "Nice to meet you," John said in his deep, warm voice. His deep blue eyes looked at Mai with genuine sincerity. "Nice to meet you too," Mai replied, trying to smile to hide her nervousness. They sat down and talked naturally. John spoke about his life in the military, the places he had been, the homesickness, and the challenges of reintegrating into everyday life. Mai listened attentively, occasionally smiling at John's humorous stories about his comrades. They seemed to find a deep connection with each other. John admired Mai's resilience and determination, while Mai found peace and safety in John's presence. Their meetings became more frequent. They walked along the beach, watched sunsets paint the sky in shades of crimson, and shared personal stories they had never told anyone else. John never realized that beneath her strong exterior, Mai carried a deep, painful burden. And Mai had no idea that the man who made her heart flutter was the descendant of the man who had slaughtered her entire family. Signs of destiny. One day, when John invited Mai over for dinner with his family, she felt extremely nervous. She prepared carefully, choosing a simple yet elegant dress, tying her long black hair neatly behind her. John's house was in the suburbs of Los Angeles, a charming little home surrounded by a garden full of vibrant roses. John's parents welcomed Mai warmly and kindly. While waiting for dinner, Mai curiously looked around the house. Her eyes stopped at an old black and white photo hanging on the living room wall. It was a vintage photograph of a man in an American military uniform, standing proudly among a group of young soldiers in a Vietnamese village backdrop. Mai's heart nearly stopped when she recognized the man standing in the center, the commander with the cold, emotionless eyes, the one who had ordered the killing of her entire family. She stumbled backward, clutching her chest as if trying to contain the pain ripping through her heart. Horrific memories flooded her mind like a violent storm: gunshots, cries of despair, and the image of her mother falling at the feet of a merciless American soldier. "That's my grandfather. He was a hero in the Vietnam War." John smiled proudly when he saw Mai looking at the picture. That smile pierced Mai's heart like a knife. She tried to stay calm, but she couldn't hide her tearful eyes and trembling voice. Your grandfather fought in Vietnam?" "Yes. He always talked about the brutal battles and the comrades who sacrificed themselves. He said he did what needed to be done to protect his country." John's words felt like thousands of daggers stabbing into Mai's heart. Did what needed to be done? Was that his reason for murdering her entire family and stealing her happy childhood? Mai felt as if her entire world was collapsing. Her love for John, the trust she had placed in him, all shattered by this cruel truth. She wanted to scream, to curse, but she couldn't. John was not at fault. He knew nothing about the bloody past. He was just an innocent man, carrying the bloodline of her family's enemy. Mai quietly stood up and excused herself, claiming she felt unwell. John worriedly offered to take her home, but she refused. She needed time to confront this heartbreaking truth alone. Part 2. The Cruel Twist of Fate. Unintentional Closeness. After that fateful evening at John's house, Mai couldn't get the image of that old photograph out of her mind. The face of John's grandfather, the man who had slaughtered her entire family, haunted her every night. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the sharp crack of gunfire, her mother's heart-wrenching screams, and the sight of her village engulfed in flames. She wanted to hate John, to sever all ties with him. But her heart wouldn't allow it. Memories of their beautiful moments together kept flooding back, from walks on the beach at sunset, late-night conversations, to warm embraces and the sincerity in his eyes. John, the man she loved, was the grandson of the man who had destroyed her family. She was torn between love and hatred, between her painful past and her conflicted present. Mai decided to avoid John for a while to clear her mind. She declined his invitations, rarely replied to his messages, and kept herself busy with work and studies. John grew worried about Mai's sudden change. He didn't understand why she was avoiding him without any clear reason. Many times he tried to confront her, but she always evaded him. "Mai, did something happen? Why are you avoiding me?" John asked with concern when he ran into Mai at the cafe where she worked. I've just been busy with school. Don't worry about me." Mai forced a smile, her voice evasive. "If you ever need to talk, I'm always here for you. I miss you, Mai." John took her hand, his deep blue eyes filled with sincerity. Mai's heart tightened. She wanted to tell him everything, to scream that his grandfather was a murderer, but she couldn't bear to hurt him. I need some time to think. Please, let me be, John." Mai pulled her hand away and walked off, tears streaming down her face. The return of the past. Trying to forget John, Mai buried herself in work and studies. But the past clung to her every night. She began having nightmares of standing in the middle of her burning village, surrounded by lifeless bodies and rivers of blood. Every time she woke up, she cried silently, clutching the painful memories she had buried deep in her heart for so many years. To escape the past, Mai turned to Peter, a classmate who had always silently cared for and protected her. Peter was kind-hearted, gentle, and sincere. He was always there for Mai whenever she needed someone to confide in. "Peter, have you ever felt that life is truly unfair?" Mai asked, her eyes distant as she gazed out the window. "Everyone has their own pain, Mai. But how we face it is what really matters," Peter replied softly, his eyes warm with understanding. Peter didn't know about Mai's past, but he sensed that she was carrying an enormous burden. He quietly stayed by her side, listening and comforting her. Mai felt safe with Peter, but her heart still longed for John. She couldn't deny her deep love for him, even though she knew that love was torn apart by hatred and the past. The appearance of Nastya. While Mai tried to distance herself from John, Nastya, the beautiful, childhood friend of John, reappeared, determined to win him back. Nastya had always seen John as hers. She couldn't accept the fact that John was attracted to an unfamiliar Asian girl. Jealousy and hatred began to grow inside her. "John, I don't understand why you're so drawn to that girl. What's so special about her?" Nastya asked, her voice laced with bitterness. "Mai isn't like anyone else. She's strong, independent, and full of determination. I admire her," John replied, his eyes filled with admiration. John's words felt like a dagger to Nastya's pride. She couldn't accept that John had feelings for another woman, especially a Vietnamese girl. Determined to break them apart, Nastya began spreading rumors that Mai was only using John to get a green card to stay in the U.S. Not stopping there, she even hired a private investigator to look into Mai's past. She discovered the horrifying truth about the blood feud between John's family and Mai's.